The starting point for most people is this insurmountable idea that I can't do anything around sustainability or global citizenship because I'm a horrible person. Okay? I use plastic, I drive a car, or I fly on planes. Okay? I can't possibly be involved in this activity.
Hello, my name is Justin Hardman, and this is the Education Vanguard. In today's episode, we're bringing you something a little different. A keynote recording that we think will leave you genuinely inspired, possibly a bit challenged, and hopefully reaching for your own metaphorical teaspoon by the end of it. What do I mean by that? Our speaker is Darcy Lunn, global citizenship advocate, sustainability educator, ultra runner, tiny house dweller, and the creator of a beautifully simple but powerful concept called Teaspoons of Change. Darcy has spent years working with schools, educators, and organizations around the world, helping them move past what he calls perfection paralysis, that nagging feeling that so much of us share that we can't possibly contribute to sustainability and global citizenship because our individual contribution's so small or we're not doing it perfectly. In this keynote recorded at 21 CLHK in Hong Kong, Darcy unpacks how small everyday actions when connected to something bigger than ourselves can start, how students, teachers, and entire school communities relate to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Over to Darcy.
Cool, thanks folks. It's end of the day, so I'm the annoying person with a lot of energy to throw at you at the end of the day, but thank you for having me. So that's a hell of a mouthful for a title to have for a presentation, but we'll unpack those long words. But let me start here. So the global goals, Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, too close to STDs to my liking, so I prefer them as the global goals, okay? Now the thing about these global goals is, what the hell are they? They look nice, pretty colours, nice little icons, but how do they actually fit into my personal life? So I went for a walk about 1,000 kilometres in Japan until I got shin splints and came up with a concept called Teaspoons of Change. And the idea of Teaspoons of Change is that feeling that we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. So when we're looking at these big SDGs, it's like these things that don't necessarily fit into my daily life. What's a terminology or a bit of vocabulary to try and get me into the game of feeling like my actions matter? So a teaspoon of change, yes, you might turn off the light and save a bit of electricity. That's lovely, that's nice. But actually, more significant is the connection you're making between your actions and their impact. So that's turning off the light isn't going to solve all the pollution problems in China today, but the fact that you are doing it is your heart is telling your head and your hand that this is something that I want to be a part of. Whether that makes a difference or not, I'm going to have the conviction to feel like that my actions matter. So that's the idea of all that. And so the shtick that I share with schools, educators, is this idea of bringing the global goals into your school and into our daily lives so that we can feel like we're a part of something much bigger than ourselves. The starting point for sustainability and global citizenship are usually these kinds of things. It's going to be the plastic police. Oh no, Darcy's coming, I better hide that drink that I'm going to have, or all those sorts of things. I'm going to give people a moral bashing or a guilt trip, or I'm going to get people to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. And all of these things come from around this idea of perfection paralysis, okay? So the starting point for most people is this insurmountable idea that I can't do anything around sustainability or global citizenship because I'm a horrible person, okay? I use plastic, I drive a car, or I fly on planes, okay? I can't possibly be involved in this activity. And so for me, the thing that I try and do is just make it accessible so that sustainability is a space for us to explore, play around in, see what I can do, see where my actions fit into the world, and actually feel good about the things that I can do instead of feeling terrible about the things that I can't do or the things that have a negative impact in the world. So I've got a good example here of a guy who has brought these global goals into his daily life and his daily work, and I'll share this example with you now.
SDGs. I have an apple. I have pineapple. No poverty. I I have a pen. I have a book. Education. 70 goals to save the globe. Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable Development Goals.
Oh, washoi. Okay, nice. So have we just lowered the bar of entry for the Sustainable Development Goal? I think we have. Look, there are two things here that I love about Piko Piko. Number one is that if a middle-aged Japanese man wearing a leopard suit can relate to the global goals and bring them into his daily life, so can you. That's point number one. Point number two is that he's doing what he does, okay? He's not trying to work for UNICEF or save the planet this, save the people that. He's being who he is and thinking about how can he twist his way of life and the thing that he does in the world to connect to these global goals or to try and make a positive impact in the world. And that's what I love, is I want to see who's the most ethical and sustainable plumber in the world, like two brothers I met in New South Wales recently, or hairdressing, or as a lawyer, or whatever the hell people want to be, but thinking about it as how can I be the most ethical and sustainable version of that? And that's where we see a saturation of small touching points that really starts to combine together to make a massive impact in the world, or at least reduce the amount of downfall that might be happening around us. So if you want some more of that, please do feast upon Piko Piko some more. Cool. So I'm going to get you on your feet in a moment. Yes, I am that annoying that I'm going to get you up and thought, no, damn, I'm just going to sit back and relax. We're going to do an Ethiopian handshake. Can I have a willing volunteer somewhere? Someone? Harik, thank you very much. Come on down. Lovely. Very easy. Hi, Summit. Darcy.
Hi.
Good to meet you as well.
Yeah, I know.
So an Ethiopian handshake is a normal handshake and then shoulder to shoulder this way, another shoulder to shoulder like that. And they say tanastaling.
Tanastaling.
Oh, endeno. Can you, this is Amharic in Ethiopian. So can you say tanastaling? Oh, endeno. Yep, no, all good. Thanks, Summer. So in a moment, what you're going to do is you're going to find someone around you, say hi, give them an Ethiopian handshake, and then you're going to do a 5-finger throw about a scale of 1 to 5, how much you like spicy food, okay? Then I'll come back around and actually make some relevance to global citizenship in a moment. So please, everyone up on your feet, give an Ethiopian handshake, have a quick conversation about how much you like spicy food. Okay, raise a hand if you can hear me. Just raise your hand if you can hear me. Thanks, folks. Raise a hand if you can hear me there. Thanks. Just raise your hand if you can hear me. Excellent. Okay, stay with your Ethiopian handshake partner because, yes, it's nice to talk about spicy food, but the bigger conversation I want you to have is not this one. Okay, this question, what is a global citizen, I feel is quite a boring question. You're searching for a definition. You can find a definition pretty easily these days. I like this question. Are you a global citizen? Because now it's personal. So with your Ethiopian handshake partner, you know how much they like spicy food. Now explore this question. Are you a global citizen? Try and answer from the heart. How'd you go? Are you global citizens? Okay, folks, give me 2 claps if you can hear me. Give me 2 more claps if you can hear me. Beautiful. And give me 3 claps if you can hear me. Okay. Feel free to grab a seat. Thank you. So your 5-finger throw, that's a hell of a mouthful. On a scale from 1 to 5, how much do you feel like that you are a global citizen, or are you a global citizen? So get your hand ready. 1 being low, 5 being high, in your own definition of a global citizen. So get ready. Okay, on the count of 3, then you will shoot how much you feel like you're a global citizen. Ready? There's no right or wrong answers. I won't come and cut fingers off or anything like that. It's all good. Ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot. Okay, make an observation with the people around you. Interesting, cool. Okay, cool, thank you. So it's a feeling, isn't it? It's not a definition. It's not saying this is right, this is wrong. You don't have to have your passport that says you're a global citizen. It's very interpretive. You could have been someone that never leaves their village, but was the most community-minded person, looked after everyone, was inclusive, helped people out. never even heard of the word global citizen as some education buzzword, yeah? Or you could be the person that's travelled around the world many times, speaks a bunch of languages, but is still a bit of a prick, or whatever it is. So I don't like to define global citizenship. I love the discovery and the exploration of the conversation. Okay, what does it look like to us? How are we trying to think about being a global citizen, and also coming back to that perfection being paralysis? So that, I can't be a global citizen because I've been on a plane before. Maybe not. There's moments where we do wonderful things that have a positive impact, and there's always going to be things that we do that have a negative impact. So it's about exploring that balance and that space between those areas. And then as educators, this is another kind of provocation. Which is better, a lesson on global citizenship or global citizenship in a lesson? And it's a trick question because you can have both, that's fine. But for me, as I go around to a lot of different schools, I'm trying to explore that second part, global citizenship in a lesson, as a lens. And do your unit and your work on recycling or inclusion, all those wonderful things, that front-on stuff, that's fantastic. But when I see the biggest resonance with students is when it pops up in a PE class. Okay, you've just grab a hold of the volleyball and say, hey, what's the most ethical and sustainable volleyball that exists in the world? What materials would it be made out of? Who makes it? What working conditions do you think are the best for someone to make a volleyball? Would it make it really expensive? Just these open-ended provocations for us to think about something bigger than ourselves. And if that pops up in a PE class and in their maths class and the drama recital, whatever it is, we're getting a saturation of these little touching points where a student's actually starting to pop out of the thing that they have to learn in a very direct fashion and starting to connect dots between themselves and the world around them. We don't want to oversaturate it either because the students will roll their eyes very quickly, and the teachers, if we beat them over the head with global citizenship and these ideas. But what I hope is that we can take back a lens to our schools and it enhances what we're already doing. So the aim is to be a value add rather than just an add-on. Of course, it is adding something on, but we want it to be something that actually makes the maths teacher really excited about this topic because they're thinking about what's the practical application of what we're learning today that has a positive impact in the world. So we don't have to have all the answers, but we can have some really good questions that help us to bolster our muscles around sustainability and global citizenship. So if I do get cornered for a definition, this is what I go for, is what does it mean to be a good person and what does a good person do? That's a lovely pursuit. That's what every school is all about. And it's an impossible task to be a good person. Jesus had a crack at it, not a bad job, but all these things are hard for us to try and do. So I think we need to recognise the difficulty in this, but also the ambition to want to be able to try and be a good person and to do it more often. And with our students, and actually with ourselves, we need this lovely balance of optimism and realism. Okay, otherwise we don't survive and we can't get up the next day to go and face the world. And with students, we can't be too optimistic. I don't want them to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, but I can't pretend and say, hey, you turn the lights off and you're saving the planet. It's just not the reality. Hey, turning the lights off, I can't tell you it's going to save the planet, but it's better to do that than to do nothing. Kids are pretty good when you level with them and just don't blow smoke up them all the time and say everything's been fine and wonderful, but also not too heavy and doom and gloom. So for me, I always make sure I have a good balance of optimistic news sources like the Happy Broadcast, not Tip the News, I keep on forgetting, Fix the News is a new one that I found about a month ago. These good news stories to keep me bouncing out of bed in the morning. And then that realism is always pretty apparent. We don't have to work too hard to find that. So this idea of innovating education for a complex world, it is a complex world, but it's also a wonderful one. And I find that sustainability and global citizenship and these things come with a lot of baggage, a lot of tension around that. But if we can look at this from a positive aspect and try and celebrate the things that we can do, it just gives that pressure relief for people and for schools to go, yeah, okay, we're not going to be perfect, but we'll see what we can do. And working upon that kind of spectrum from 0 to 100 of always just trying to increment that idea of what does it mean to be a more active and effective global citizen over time. And then this is a pretty good summary that works for me, is if we're doing small actions that have a positive impact, call it teaspoons of change or whatever you want, if we're doing these little things that helps us to think and become better global citizens which connect to those big global goals. And so now's a good time to start to introduce things like the global goals. Not starting with them, I often prefer to work up towards it. So that there's a bit of context before we say, hey, collective action and collective context might actually be a good thing to work towards these big goals that the world agreed upon in 2015. And then you can start to unpack these and, okay, let's start here with the global goal. Number 5, reduce gender equality. What does it mean to be a global citizen in that space? And what actions can I take that honour some of those global goals? So working back in reverse for those sorts of ideas. So it's just a bit of vocabulary, a bit of concepts, and just trying to make these things accessible. So yeah, my name is Darcy Lunn with a strange spelling. That's my mum's fault, but that's okay. But I've been really lucky to work with lots of different organisations, learn a lot from lots of different people, and I'm always on the eye out for good people doing good things. And so whatever topic or unit or area or things that are being learnt in schools, there are always good people doing good things in that space, which is, I think we're in a really lucky place. A teaspoon of change for me personally was to just stop using single-use plastic bottles. And so 15 years ago, I bought my last single-use plastic bottle. I do burn through a few of the squeezy ones I use for ultra running. They get dropped and cut and things, but generally speaking, not single-use. And this was after 8 years, I counted the number of single-use plastic bottles that the average Australian uses, multiplied it by 8, and that's what's represented behind me. So a teaspoon of change is a nice piece of vocabulary to show the impact that we can't see. So every time I said, no thank you, I don't want a plastic bottle, I'll boil my water, I'll filter it, I'll wait until I get a tap, or I'll dehydrate just for today, whatever it might be, it doesn't feel like it matters. And then when we get those things, it's that one bottle. Have I saved the world? Hell no. But I just know that I haven't been responsible for those bottles in particular. Did I stop the production of plastic bottles? Of course I didn't. But it feels good to me. And that's a really important part of sustainability, is for our own sense of purpose and well-being. It's really useful for our students to feel good about some things that they can do. They don't get that opportunity very much. And then this mindset and this attitude spills over into lots of different things. So a self-sufficient tiny house in New Zealand, the same colour as my shirt, but that was an accident. And then these ideas. If I say to students, all right, we're going to talk about sustainability, the eyes do roll and they're like, ugh. So I try and Trojan horse these things into anything and everything I can find. So I talk a lot about tiny houses. I'm just about to build another one for the first time in 10 years. That one was in New Zealand, this one's in South Australia. But it's connecting those individual actions. Everyone isn't going to live in a tiny house, and I wouldn't wish it upon them, but there are concepts in there of, simplifying my life, or what does renewable energy look like at a personal scale, or all these different conversation starters to try and elicit high quality conversations. That's one of the keys, I think, in the space of sustainability. Again, just not trying to own that space too much, but letting it provocate out there. You don't have to be this excited about riding a bike. I just ridden around New Zealand for 4,000 kilometres. I was pretty happy to be finished. So was my ass. But these individual actions do fit into a collective context. So when we ride a bike, it adds to my good health and well-being if I'm not being hit by a truck, which is nice. It's promoting sustainable cities and communities. The more people who ride a bike is screaming for more infrastructure. It may or may not happen, but that's what's happening when you're riding a bike. And of course, some climate action. I'm producing less emissions by riding my bike than if I was driving a car. So it's that connection between individual actions and collective context that is really useful for us and for our students. And for these to be really accessible to our staff. So if we were to talk about these global goals and we had to explain them to an alien, your little sister, a grandpa, maybe a president or two around the world, or your best friend, how would you explain those global goals? So we have these big global goals. Just take a moment to the person around you. How would you explain them to someone who's never seen them or heard of them or thought of them before? Off you go, have a chat. A quick chat. Okay, thank you. So these global goals are a bit complicated, to be honest. Like, I'm half a fan of them. I use them a lot. I've been using them for 11 years since they came out in 2015, but they're a bit neo-colonial, neoliberal, white men in a building kind of thing. But the world agreed upon them, which is nice, okay? And at least they exist, I think, is the thing. But I feel like I have two choices. One is to throw rocks and say how terrible they are, or embrace them and try and use them in a useful kind of way that supports student learning, supports our schools and our community to feel a sense of belonging or identity or connection to something bigger than ourselves. So the way we explain these global goals, I think, is really useful to pause and take a moment and think about, actually how are we? Are they just slapped up in our wall at a school? Do we actually make any reference to them? Is there context to all of these things? And so for me, I like explaining these as a plan. It's a plan to end extreme poverty, reduce inequality, and protect our planet. And I think the world's better off having that plan as an aspiration to try and do these things. It also means that we can't do any of these things by ourselves as one person. And it's nice that we have this collective context to try and work towards them. And then the good life goals, I'm surprised a lot of people haven't seen or heard of these before. They're quite useful. They're not made for students. They're just the individual version of the global goals or individual examples of those. So for example, global goal number 12, responsible consumption and production. It's a hell of a mouthful. Whereas the good life goal is live better and gives us a couple of little tips around what that might look like. And what I like is if we're doing this as an individual, then it fits into those big global goals. So I wouldn't say, hey, use these in primary school and use the global goals for senior school. That's not really the best fit for them. We need those good life goals at an individual level and those global goals in a collective context in those areas. So for me, global citizenship hopefully is a useful lens to bring into our school to enhance what we're already up to make those mission statements actually try and live and speak and breathe with a bit more velocity, and finding opportunities to create a better future. So again, that nice aspirational aspect to those things. And then this question, do you think we'll achieve the global goals by 2030, end extreme poverty, reduce inequality and protect our planet? No, of course not. No, hell no. But can we achieve those goals? We probably can if we got our crap together and worked with a bit more collaboration and all those sorts of things. They are possible. Are we going to achieve them? No, probably not. But I would rather be trying to work towards them than to do nothing. If we do nothing, nothing can change. If we do something, I can't guarantee anything, but it's probably better to do something than to do nothing. So again, that really important aspect of realism for our students and for our schools. So this whole idea of global citizenship or innovation in education isn't this massive aspirational, untouchable thing. It actually comes back to being, okay, sometimes I make some good choices and sometimes I use resources, etc. But this conversation here is if we're connecting everyday actions to a feeling that we're a part of something bigger than ourselves, then in your context, what would that look like? And a quick term of phrase here to help us out, and I use this in my workshop, is from Richard Hames, a futurist. And he has this idea of systemic acupuncture point. So where can we put our small little needle of influence to create a positive impact in the world? And it's a beautiful thing as educators. We have that opportunity to make an influence with students and in our staff room. So think really carefully about that needle point of where can we put our needle of influence to try and have a positive impact. We might have to stab around in the dark a little bit, so be careful. But it is that opportunity for us to really think about that. And it's going to be a small change. It's hard for us to affect huge, big systems change by ourselves as one individual. But if we can strategically put those pressure points in at the right places with enough people, we can really start to make some really positive change. So that's something to take home and think about as you head back to your schools. Where is that little spot? What can I do when I get back into my school? And I love that education is a really strong part of those global goals, a beautiful opportunity to be a part of education that makes a positive impact in the world. And when I work with staff, it's when that alarm goes off on Monday morning, just try and remember a couple of these things. Because, I'm off to work to try and save the world and make the planet a better place. But it's nice to have a personal connection and feeling that my actions matter and feel like they're contributing to something. And then just quickly to share a couple of ideas around systems and structures and frameworks. There's plenty out there. Oxfam, UNESCO, go full tilt. They've got 154 pages of a lovely document around it all. It's all there. But what I like about this that we created at Education in Motion is from a student perspective. And so these are the times, places, interactions and experiences our students should interface or interact with sustainability and global citizenship. So I found I couldn't find any documents that came from a student perspective. So we sat down with students and said, okay, where do you reckon it should pop up? And these are some of the places. So this isn't a framework of, yeah, grab this and use it. Have a conversation with your students or your community and find out, yeah, when and where and how should sustainability pop up in our school or in our life? And then what are some indicators? Like these are really bland. This is actually before, I don't use a lot of AI, so I actually sat down and they came out of my own brain. But I think the process is more important than the product. This could be very useful and you can use it as a variant to something else, but take people through that process. So then they have a bit of ownership, you've sat down, thought of something, you've created it, and then yeah, sure, slap it up on the wall, but remember it was just a representation of a couple of people meeting at a certain time to be revisited over and over again. So it should be updated, edited, modified, all that sort of thing as you go along. But if you're keen on that, then there's some starting points. And then underlying principles, all these sorts of things. These are just nice reminders for us to go, okay, today in our class, are we going to touch upon any of these things at any moment today? Yeah, we should probably have a look at making good choices. All right, let's have a conversation about that in the context of today's learning. Yeah, so these are just stimuli for us to remember that there are conversations to have about the bigger, wider world. So when I go into schools, I try and offer some lenses to look at the world. So at any moment, whatever we're doing, how does this fit into a collective context of one finite planet with 8+ billion people, and using the SDGs, and then the flip side of that lens of what about me as an individual, and my personal choices, decisions and actions. And you can bring this lens into any moment. And then the lens of diversity, I think, is really powerful for us to just be thinking from different perspectives. So if we're this topic about year 5 and we're doing magnets or whatever the hell it is, what does this mean for a rural Nigerian female farmer? I've got no idea what it's like to be a rural Nigerian female farmer, but I do thinking about that aspect of, yeah, how does this fit into a different perspective than just my own? So these provocations are, again, trying to enrich these things that we're already doing. So my favourite party trick in a staff room by day is where can you infuse a lens of global citizenship into any lesson? So I usually ask staff, right, give me the hardest lesson you can think of that doesn't relate anything to sustainability and global citizenship. And then my trick is to try and give a little twist so that you might have a conversation where it fits into that piece. But what I'm going to do is hand this party trick over to you and give you some of the provocations that work for almost any moment. Okay, so if whatever the lesson might be or the topic or the unit, hey, what's the most ethical or sustainable example of this thing that we're doing? Or what is a real world application of this topic that makes a positive impact on people or the planet? Yeah, so there's really easy conversations that we can just add to add a higher quality component. And then what are at least 3 different perspectives on this topic? So then we're not just looking straight down the corridor at something very linear, but actually we're opening up the doors a bit, opening our minds and creating that kind of lens and sense of global citizenship. And then a couple more that have come to me more recently as well is what would Mother Nature say if she was in the room, okay, at this particular moment? And see what she says, oh, it's bloody freezing in here. Why is it so cold? Why have they got the air conditioning cranked up so much? And I love this one as well. So if you're in a meeting or in the classroom, see this chair here? This is for future generations. We're going to check in on future generations around this topic, around this conversation, and let's see what they might say about this and what we're learning. And then what are your personal and practical teaspoons of change that you can take on this topic? So again, making it personal and practical and trying to make it visceral for the learning, because then otherwise they've gone through a lesson, I don't know where the hell I'm ever going to use this topic or why are we doing this, but these little quips and provocations hopefully enhance all that sort of thing. And then I'm sure there's plenty of others. It's taken me 15 years to come up with 6 decent ones, but see how you go. And then an active global citizen, what we want to do is try and make good choices, good decisions, good actions, and feel good about doing it. I'd say that part is really important, to feel good about trying to play the game and be a part of this. And then the kind of extension on all of this is this space of regenerative and restorative. So conventional ways of doing things, very harm heavy. Green is usually just less harm. It doesn't mean that it's wonderful and perfect. Sustainable is where help and harm are about equal. And then we've got this space of restorative and regenerative, where we try and work towards more net positive outcomes, or in better words from the Green School in Bali, working like nature works. So sustainability, it's not like it's better than sustainability. Sustainability is a bit different. Sustainability is how long something can last. Regeneration, how good something can be. Or actually working like nature works. How do we sit back, look at things from a different perspective, grow organically, wild and untamed, and see where it all goes. So I'm really enamoured with this idea of regeneration and the extension of that to come. And then I like to give, I wouldn't say it's completely regenerative, but I like to give commercial examples for students. They care about smartphones. They're not going to care about most of the stuff I say, but I show them this slide and go, hey, this is probably the most ethical, sustainable phone that I know of. It's modular. If you break it, it can be fixed. It's a lifetime warranty for a phone. What the hell? The materials for these are fair trade sourced as much as possible. That means women get paid the same rate as men, no children involved in the supply of that product. So people have really tried hard to make the most ethical and sustainable phone that I know of. There could be something more than that. And if, like I'm into running, I love my running, and Tarkine make really ethical and sustainable running shoes. Okay, every part of that shoe can somehow be reused, biodegradable, or brought back into that circular economy, recycled in the least part. I'm not a salesperson for these products, just sharing them, but to try and capture that imagination. Like, what if everything was just a bit more sustainable or a bit more ethical? What would it look like to us? And then search engines, Google, blah, 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 money goes to a corporate, whereas Ecosia goes to planting trees. They've got their same kind of advertising that generates income, but that income goes to planting trees. Actually, I haven't updated this for a while. I think it's over 200 million. Enough people use Ecosia that it goes towards planting over 183 million trees, which is pretty cool. So to wrap up, this is the last provocation. How can you be a good one? What does it look like? How would you infuse or enhance any lesson or a learning opportunity with a global citizen lens? I think innovating education as 21C have brought us all together to do this. I hope this is some useful tips and ideas for you. That's a bit of a summary slide that I'm very happy to share with folks, but there's a bunch of ideas out there for us to work towards, and sustainability isn't just something to learn, it's hopefully something to live, and that's really what we want to try and do. So what are your teaspoons of change? Good luck with all of that. And we can all have everything we want in life as long as we don't want everything. That's my cheeky little quip. But I also live by this formula, is that any action, even small actions, multiplied by lots of people can and will create big change. There's no guarantees around it, but if we all have a crack and see what happens, the chances are much higher than if we didn't. I think that's a really powerful formula for us to try and think and believe and see what happens around all of that. So good luck with your teaspoons of change. Good luck with those global goals. Please feel free to keep in touch, and thanks for having me. Thank you.